Welcome to Last in Line podcast, where we are highlighting, showcasing, and spotlighting great leaders of faith who have overcome adversity, cultivated resilience, and served others in a significant capacity. So settle in and be encouraged by this episode of Last in Line podcast. Guys, I want to welcome back to the podcast none other than Kevin Estela, Director of Survival at Fieldcraft Survival. Kevin's the Director of Survival for Fieldcraft. He's a lifelong outdoorsman with over 2 decades of teaching in the great outdoors. He is well-versed in bushcraft and survival skills and is former Lead Survival Instructor of the Wilderness Learning Center under the late Marty Simon, one of Kevin's mentors. Kevin's the author, also best-selling author of 101 Skills You Need to Survive in the Woods. He has published over 150 magazine articles. He regularly hones his capabilities in different environments around the globe, including the Arctic, the desert, the jungle, and most of his emphasis is the northern forest. He joined Fieldcraft Survival when the CEO, Mike Glover, reached out to him after Mike read Kevin's book, and they developed a relationship, a friendship, and then Mike offered him a job after 14 years of teaching public high school history. Kevin's background is extensive in training in Filipino Martial Arts, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. He's completed a number of pistol, shotgun, carbine, and precision scope rifle courses. Kevin is a teacher at heart, and today you're in for a treat because we're going to focus in on teenagers and preparing them and heightening their situational awareness, talking about what they can do practically when they leave the house as a group to go out into social environments, to be aware of what's going on around them, things they can have on their person that might be a utility tool and also could be used for self-defense. So he covers a lot of things. We talk about force, space, and timing, which are the 3 elements of any sort of violent encounter, potentially. We talk about the rules of 3. We talk about the hands, waistband, wingspan, which he'll go into. And then we also talk about desire, opportunity, and ability. Those kinds of things that a potential predator might try to capitalize on. So this could be for your kids. It's definitely for my kids. If you have tieagers, if you have ones that are coming up into that age group, this is for them. Share it and reach out to Kevin. We're going to put some notes in there about their Fieldcraft Survival app. You can get tons of educational material, live training that they do, and a link to Kevin's book. So with that, help me welcome back to Last in Line podcast, Mr. Kevin Estela. Hey, Kevin Estela, welcome back to Last in Line podcast. It's been a little over a year since your last appearance, but thanks for doing this.
Man, time flies. I don't feel like it's been a year, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, I was gonna, in preparing, I was thinking, golly, I don't know if you're supposed to, in the handbook of podcasting, which I am not the expert on. I thought you don't ever have the same guest twice in a year, but then I looked and it wasn't this year. And I thought, wow, how's it been 12? It's been like 14 months. And I thought that doesn't seem like it. And I guess when you're keeping up with people on social media, you sort of feel like you're still in their world. And so maybe that's why it just doesn't seem like that long, but no, I appreciate it, man. When I reached out and I've got, a couple teenagers and I've got some that are early 20s, and I'm about to be a grandfather since I talked to you last, in April. I mean, the world is going by quickly. And one of my sons, my oldest, in fact, the guy who's having the baby, is a public school teacher and a baseball coach. So I don't know. I just had a heart for reaching out to somebody like yourself in regards to that age group. And these kids are out in the world. They're out socializing. They're doing stuff. They're always busy and they're rarely paying attention. I'm sorry. I'm speaking for my own kids, but if it wasn't for me always hounding them, I don't know that they'd just be aware of what's going on. So I was like, Kevin Estela, he's my guy. He knows not only a lot about bushcraft and the great outdoors, but he knows a lot about self-defense and preparedness. I do want to get your background a little bit, just for those who we've got a few new people in the last 14 months, thankfully, who are listening to the podcast. And I guess give us an idea, broad range. I know you wrote a book a while back, 101 skills that you need to survive in the woods. And
Yeah. So basically, my life in 5 pretty simple statements. Number one, I grew up in New England, and I grew up in an amazing family. With my father, who was a internal medicine doctor. Raised 3 kids, and I was the youngest of 3. And I grew up as an outdoorsman, hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, all of it. That was my background, growing up. And then I became a high school history teacher in 2006. Now, prior to that, I was working as a substitute teacher, and that's where I really found my passion for teaching. So right around 2003 is when I got into the public education system. But then in 2006, I became a full-time high school history teacher, while at the same time I was straddling the world of teaching survival skills up at the Wilderness Learning Center in upstate New York. So when school was out, I was teaching at the other school, and that's how I existed from 2007 until approximately 2012. Then, that whole time, I was a professional training junkie. I got into martial arts, I got into all the shooting disciplines. I studied as much as I could, because I felt like that's what I needed to do, and that's what I needed to better myself. Fourth fact is that, I've always been a writer. I just found a poem that I wrote when I was 13 or 14 years old that got into the anthology of poetry by Young Americans. So I thought that my first professional writing, or my first writing, was like in 2007, but the reality is I was much younger. So I've written well over 175 printed magazine articles in 25 different magazines, well over a couple hundred blogs, and then, as you mentioned, a best-selling book that's sold thousands of copies on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all over. And now I work at Fieldcraft Survival. I'm here in North Carolina, and I'm pretty much standing up the East Coast training. I'm surrounded by 35 million people in North Carolina and in the surrounding area, and we have people driving in, flying in from all over, just because the population density is so great here. So tomorrow I've got a defensive shotgun class of 11 people, and they're coming in from Georgia, South Carolina. They're coming in from Western North Carolina, Virginia, all over. So pretty exciting life. And, someone who I'm never going to ever level off. I'm always going to keep looking for the next best thing, always looking for a way to improve the lives of others around me, and maybe along the way improve my own.
yeah, that's good, man. I had the time range way off. I don't know where I got that, but no, I knew you were in. I've heard you talk about teaching, and I can hear it in your voice. Like, I can just hear that teaching is your gift. Like, that's your calling. Now, right now you're teaching mostly, I'm sure you get some younger adults, but mostly, grown men who are wanting to be better at a particular skill. Your specialty, if I'm putting words in your mouth, is bushcraft, though, right? Like the great outdoors, that is your sweet spot. Like, I don't know that there's a whole lot you don't know about surviving out there. And so, but your heart, I can tell you still have like this spark for that young group, that next generation. I'm excited to hear your take. I mean, I know you don't have children, but I'm excited to hear your take on how we dive into getting the message across to this age group of, Gen Z and that next generation about how serious situational awareness is. A lot of the guys that listen to my podcast have teenagers and ones that are about to be teenagers. So this is going to land on a lot of people. Before we do that, though, I gotta do the same thing I do with everybody. We do a fun deal I call life sentence. Okay. Not to be morbid, but no, life sentence. You're going to complete the sentence for me. And I'm going to just give you some hypotheticals here, and you're going to do it from your perspective, and just kind of, you can elaborate, you can flow however you want to take it. But it's all you right here. All right, here, but let's dive in. They're pretty light. Um, this is a good one. First one. What I miss most about being a history teacher is,
The genuine interaction with kids and the feedback that they gave me that warmed my heart.
man,
And
that's yeah.
if I can elaborate on that one, it's when they tell me things like, "You are the positive male role model I never had." You know, when they say like, "I don't feel safe at home, but I feel safe in your classroom." When they say things like, I mean, geez, I can think back to so many, but little things like, I always knew what room I was walking into when I walked into your room because I just stayed consistent, and I think that's a virtue. So the positive interactions I had with kids, and the genuine feedback that they gave me.
Yeah, 100%. And my son would, I would be remiss for his sake if I didn't ask this one. What'd you like the least? Because I think you might have been probably just getting, well, I say getting out as the cultural narratives start to overtake public school now. I don't know if you got in on the tail end or the tail head or the the head of that, the beginning of that, the forefront of that or not. But is that something? Would you like the least about education system?
I mean, I would have to say what I liked least was the bureaucracy that was involved. I mean, when you start getting removed from the classroom, you start losing sight of what you need to best affect the students. And, whenever we would have someone from, we would just say downtown, right? The Board of Ed, whenever we'd have someone downtown come in and be like, well, this is how you're going to teach your class, this. And it's like, I know that that sounds great. I know what book you read that from. I read the same book. But here's the reality. These kids are not worried about having this label because they're concerned about where they're eating tomorrow and if they're going to have lunch today. Like, it's so interesting when you watch the bureaucrats try to get involved and you don't let the teachers just do their job. The amount of paperwork that we'd have to file to do something. Like, there was a girl one time who said that she was kicked out of her bedroom because someone in the family said, "You're not sleeping there anymore. We're using your room for this and that. You're sleeping on wooden chairs in the kitchen." And I remember hearing this and meeting with the team and being like, "What are we doing?" And they're like, "Well, we have to document. We have to document. We have to document." And it's like, so all this time we're going to let this kid sleep on wooden chairs in the kitchen? Like, there were things that would make you cry. And there were times where I would leave work, and I always say, uh, go home from work, don't take your work home with you, right? But there are times where it's like these stories are in your head, and it's like, how do you sleep comfortably in your bed knowing that one of your kids, whether you have 100 of them, 130 of them, or whatever, one of your kids is probably struggling right now. Like, that's what I miss, or I miss the least, was knowing that someone wouldn't let me do my job.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
knowing that
And
we
you
couldn't.
can't fix everything either. I mean, because naturally you want to fix those situations. Like you want to reach in and pluck them out of that environment, right? You want to adopt them all and take care of all of them, clothed, feed, shelter. Like I just, yeah, I don't know. So we live in a similar, I don't know, from what you're telling me, probably a similar area. Like there's a good mix. I mean, it's super diverse. But there's some classes, and my son happens to teach one of the biology classes of some of the kids that may be from a different socioeconomic, area. And I bet there are some stories like you're talking about, and it just, all you can do is just give of yourself and hope that it, something sticks. So, all right, let's jump in again. We'll touch more on some of that in a little bit, but how about this? I threw this one in selfishly because I just kind of wanted to get your idea, knowing that I know you're a physical, shape guy, you're a fitness guy, you're a defense guy. So what's a more useful skill set in the wilderness? Physical muscular strength or cardiovascular endurance? Because me and my ultra runner buddies go at each other a lot, and I'm not a runner as you can tell. But what would you say pays off more to be able to do? Lift a lot of heavy stuff or run a long way?
Oh man, I am going to tick off a lot of people with this answer, and I'm going to say lift heavy stuff. And let me back myself up here. I'm going to say that, assuming that someone is in really really good cardiovascular shape, let's say that they are built like a traditional runner, like maybe an ultra marathon runner, where they have very little body fat whatsoever. I'm going to say that they're probably going to get colder than the guy who looks like he throws bales
Mm-hmm.
of hay in the back of a truck, right? Like, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
talking like Arnold,
Mm-hmm.
bodybuilder. I'm talking power lifter that might have like, what is it called? The exomorphic, shape where, you've got like you
Yeah.
know, the, the farm boy strength. So I'm going to
Yeah.
say that just for the perspective of like, hey, we're going into winter and I would rather have someone who's stronger and isn't going to be complaining about the cold, and maybe they can help me move some logs and build that fire than the person who is going to, be in super great shape. And yeah, maybe they can run and get help and come back. But, I need people around me that can lift things
Yeah.
and maybe have some extra calories built on their body. I wish I were in better cardiovascular shape. I wish I could run like some of these people that I've seen and have like 7% body fat, but I'm half Polish and I like carbs, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna I'm gonna I'm
Yeah.
gonna bulk up a little bit now that winter's coming.
Well, I mean, I don't train jujitsu, but I know that you've got to be in some cardiovascular shape too, because that can take a toll, I would think, from endurance standpoint. But we'll put the less body fat runner guys on the bow drill, and then
Yeah.
we'll go cut down trees and haul some trees off. But in all seriousness, when you're doing an outdoor training and you've got guys overnight places in some hairy conditions, not modernity's nowhere near you guys. Do you kind of get a grasp, but like you kind of get an eye on certain guys, like you're noticing things? Okay, here's a guy I might want to keep an eye on, because I mean we could get down to not a whole lot of food and it's going to get in the 20s, and maybe I keep an eye on him because he's not as fluffy as this guy. I don't know. Are you looking at that when you're sort of assessing your talent?
Well, I'll tell you a fun story that ties right into that. So
Yeah.
this past October, we ran the Advanced Survival Experience, and this class is 48 hours long. It's 2 nights in a primitive shelter over 3 days, limited food, and we stress the heck out of the students in terms of we put them in a scenario. So in this particular Advanced Survival Experience, we had the students on an ecotourism trip where they were going to be traveling with the quote unquote dogwood tribe. So they're in this tribe in this foreign land. They're surrounded by hostiles. They're told you can't go XYZ. You can't move around to these different places, but you got to stay in the camp. By the way, there are going to be, and we didn't plan this, just happened to be. There are Joro spiders that are highly invasive. There are black snakes. There are potentially copperheads.
Hmm.
Like, and we didn't plan this. Like, it's there. And sure enough, in camp, there are snakes slithering by, like within arm's reach away. And the students were like, "Oh my gosh!" And then between the first and the second night, the students had to keep the fire going. There were 6 of them, and we said, "Guys, it's going to get dark at this time. It's going to get light at this time. You're dealing with approximately 12 hours of darkness. You're going to probably want to do a couple at the fire, do fire watch." And we taught and taught and taught up until a certain point. And as soon as we got done, Mother Nature cooperated, and it was like you set your watch to it. 10 o'clock at night, it was a torrential downpour, which meant that these guys had to stay up from 10 o'clock at night, continuing to keep the fire going all through the night. And they worked in, I'm sorry, they did 3 shifts of 3 hours each. So it was 9 hours that they had to do it. And those middle hour guys, oh, they were the saviors. But we could hear them the first shift, they were chatty. The second shift, they were just miserable. You could hear a lot of heavy sighs. And then the last shift, they got to see the sunrise, but it was still raining. But in that whole scenario, Advanced Survival Experience, we always kind of keep an eye out on the students. We always check to see, who is, shivering. If they're shivering, we always ask if there are any health conditions. We have a assistant instructor. He's a nationally recognized EMT. So we're paying attention to that, and everything is scripted. There's no way
Mm-hmm.
around it. Where, the amount of food that we give them, we are monitoring that,
Mm-hmm.
and we're monitoring like, okay, just how cold will it get? What will we give them? How much guidance will we give them to help them tighten up that
Mm-hmm.
shelter? We know what that shelter is going to feel like inside if they don't close in the sides or if they don't put a flap on the front. So everything is scripted. And, even though they feel like they're in the scenario, when we go off to the side, we're game planning. And we're like, okay, we're going to give them something fatty as a reward tonight, and that will help
Mm-hmm.
metabolize them through the night. So, oh yeah, fitness comes into play, and for people who think it's just about mindset or just about the gear and not the physicality of the person carrying it or
Hmm.
owning the mindset, they're in for a world of hurt because
Yeah.
physicality matters.
It's nice to have all the above, I would think, because mental mindset's going to take its toll on you too after a certain point. But I think I remember seeing that when you posted, like, it was just raining nonstop at one point.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was like, oh, that does not look fun. Although when they come out of it, I bet you they're just, I mean, there's memories for days on that deal. But okay. So let's get a little deeper here on a couple of these. I wanted to hear just personally, I don't think I've ever talked to you about this because we get so locked in on tactics and strategies and just practical like survival stuff. I wanted to know, so I'm going to finish this sentence. The greatest obstacle in my life that I've had to overcome has been.
Wow, that one could be any number of obstacles. I mean, okay, so let's talk about some of the major ones that affect people. Financial. There have been financial obstacles over time. I mean, I took a pay cut to work at Fieldcraft Survival from my teaching job, and I am definitely the result of I'm living the result of moving across country multiple times, and now I'm finally settled here. So financially, you know, I could say like that's the hardest thing in the world, but I know if I get put into any position, I'm going to be able to earn money. That's just what I do. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
worker. So financial hardship, not the hardest, but it can be difficult at times. Another hardship that people encounter are health related, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not my health that I've had to deal with. Like I try to stay in shape. Every so often blood pressure spikes. I've got a history of it in my family, but I have good doctors. Shout out to Dr. Arthur Apollinario here in Clinton, North Carolina. Good dude. So health isn't my problem, but last summer, my this was in 2022. My dad and my mom got sick at the exact same time. And my father had renal failure, and my mother was diagnosed with biliary cancer, and she ultimately passed away, in July. And I'll tell you, that was very, very difficult because, my father, even to this day, says I should have been taken first. My dad is going to be turning 85 years old in just a few weeks, and you know, he's in a period of mourning in his life now where he
Mm-hmm.
prefers to wear black, and it's cultural, from the Philippines. He doesn't want to wear bright colors. So
Mm-hmm.
health wise, it wasn't my health, but it was my parents' health. So
Yeah.
that was very difficult.
Yeah.
Other things like I've never lost my faith, never once lost my faith, but I know a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people who have. I'm a Christian. I go to church whenever I can.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where I'm on the road and I can't make it, but it doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not praying, and I never go a day without prayer. So I haven't lost my faith. Now, I've surrounded myself with some great people, and I can say that I don't like interacting with people who aren't on the same path as me and they don't have the same worldview. So that was something that was taught to me by my late mentor, Chris Syak. And I'll tell you that that has kept me from hardship. Now, of all the hardships that are out there, perhaps you could say relationships. Like last year, I was
Mm-hmm.
involved in a relationship with a gal, and at one point, she told me she was contemplating taking her life, and ultimately, that relationship, you know, it fell apart. I think I'm stronger because of it, but in that whole relationship, I guess you could call it the victim of gaslighting. I was someone who was told, hey, this is one thing, but it was something else, and trying to convince me otherwise. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But knock on wood, I will say I don't really consider my life a difficult life. I don't really feel like I've had the hardships that other people have had. So I have nothing I can complain about in the
Mm-hmm.
grand scheme of things compared to some people who I know who have lost kids, compared to some
Mm-hmm.
people I know who have lost their house, they've lost their jobs, compared to some people I know who, they, for one reason or another, their life just gets flipped on its head. With the
Mm-hmm.
support of loved ones and good friends, life is never that bad. And you just have to stay optimistic. And I can say I've
Yeah.
been very fortunate that my life has been pretty darn good.
Yeah. No, I like that. Thanks for going into the detail because I know I knew you had gone through some of that with your mom earlier or was it I guess last year, but I lost my dad. It's been 8 years, I guess. And it doesn't get a whole lot easier. I'll be honest. I mean, I think about him, I think every day almost. And so I wonder what my dad, and I'll ask you, what would your dad's advice be as we transition kind of into this young adult teenager type conversation? What's your advice you think your dad would have, or maybe you guys have talked about it, to the younger generation, the next generation, teenagers, if he's talking to a room of them about keeping your head on a swivel, situational awareness, preparedness, just being aware of what's going on outside the device you're holding? What do you think? Could you put words in his mouth and be fairly accurate?
Yeah. So here's what my father used to say to me when I was a kid. He would say, first off, when it comes to like just about giving thanks, right? Just being appreciative for what you have. He would say, when you wake up in the morning, you can see the ceiling. Be thankful that you can see. When you wake up in the morning and you can walk to the bathroom, be thankful that you're walking, because there are people who can't do either of those and they would kill to be in your shoes. My dad always says things like, keep your life simple, right? Keep your life simple. And what's one quick way to complicate your life? We'll try to do too many things at once. So if you think about it, walking and using your phone at the same time, do one at a time. Walk to where you need to go and then take out your phone. If you want to stay situationally aware, focus on one thing. If you're walking, guess what? You can't be 100% in your device because you're thinking about walking. And if you are going to be in your device, you might as well appreciate the heck out of it. So why don't you stop walking and slow down and do exactly, look what I did. Instead of driving and taking this call, I'm parked outside of a supermarket taking this call, because it allows me to focus. It allows me to simplify what I need to do into individual components instead of trying to do multiple at once. Because anytime you try to multitask, you're not doing any task as well as you could do individually. So my dad would say things like, simplify your life, be thankful. And my father would ultimately say things like, say a little prayer, right? Like, have a little faith that things are going to go your way, right? And he would say that, and it's just so important to believe in that, because when people lose faith, then they start compromising their relationships. When they lose faith, they stop taking care of themselves. When they lose faith, they stop working hard, and now they're compromising their income. So there are so many ways that, and by the way, when I say faith, for those that are listening who might not be religious, you don't have to be religious to have faith. You can believe in having the American dream someday, of the house with the white picket fence and the wife with the 2.5 kids, and the lemonade with the real slices of lemon in it. I mean, that could be what you believe in. Never lose track of the prize. Never lose track of what you're shooting for, because when you start losing track of that, then you start devaluing the importance of each and every day.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, simplify. I think that could go for all of us. Just learning how to simplify some things and trim away some of the fat that we allow to be extra weight in our lives. And I mean, just imagine how much margin we create in our day if we kind of eliminate things that are unnecessary. Not to mention, we're more aware. Like you said, the less we're juggling as we're trying to function, the more aware of that one or two things that we are doing, we will be. Well, so not to bore the audience with a bunch of statistics, but when I prepared to talk to you, I kind of wanted to know, like, what are some tangible black and white facts about just, I guess, teen violence, abductions? We talk a lot about trafficking. That's a hot topic and has been, and probably will continue to be for a little bit, unfortunately. But there's a couple websites I was looking at, and I just throw these out to you as we transition to this particular topic. But obviously, I think 78% of the victims, it says, who are abducted are women. Okay. And I know I teach women defense classes, and just like you do, it's not gender specific necessarily. A third of the victims who were abducted, this is recently too, I believe 2022, were between 15 and 20 years of age. That's alarming, considering I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old son. But what are, when you hear stats like that, and even talking about people who experience like violence in dating, right? Like they get into a sticky situation there. Man, do you have specific classes that you guys teach that are tailored to a particular age group, or do you see the adults that come bring their teenagers because they want them to learn?
Yeah, we see both, and I think the scariest stat that's out there right now, one that I bring up, and it's been relevant for many years, is 1 out of 5 girls will be sexually assaulted by the time she's 18.
Mm-hmm.
That really freaks me out because you think about it, how many women are in your life right now? You could probably count five, and that
Yeah.
means that maybe one of them has been and isn't saying a word.
Wow.
That one breaks my heart because when I used to be a high school history teacher, you'd always see like the senior guys picking on the freshman girls. Now,
Yeah.
the senior guys are 18 years old. The freshman girls are 14.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're 54 years old and your girlfriend, your girlfriend, your wife is 50, well, 4 years at 50 and 54 is nothing.
Yeah.
But when you're an 18-year-old man and you're dealing with a child, not only can you hurt them physically, you're going to mess them up mentally. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the one that bothers me to no end is 1 out of 5 girls are sexually assaulted by the age of 18. Now, we definitely do teach women courses, female only courses, where we talk about the importance of women understanding situational awareness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Does someone have the desire, opportunity, and ability to hurt you? Because if they have all three of those, then there's a very good chance that you're not going to go home tonight, right? Desire, opportunity, and ability. Someone can have desire to hurt you and opportunity, but no ability. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine like a little child telling you, hey, I want to kill you, right? Well, they might be right in front of you, but if they're a little child, even if they feel it in their heart, they don't have the
Mm-hmm.
ability. You're physically larger. Now that changes when you get older, and obviously the male of our species is larger than the female across the world. Now, if someone has opportunity and ability to hurt someone but no desire, well, guess what? That could be your big brother, or that could be your father who's trying to protect you, right? They definitely have the opportunity to hurt you. You're letting them in close. You're trusting them.
Mm-hmm.
They have
Mm-hmm.
ability. They may have a pistol on their side or a blade on their other strong side, but they have no desire. And then there are people out there who have desire and ability to hurt you, but they have no opportunity because there's physical space between you or some type of barrier like prison bars. So there's no doubt in my mind that women can learn. And I'm really focused on the women here because
Mm-hmm.
it does happen to men, but not statistically as frequently as women. Now, there are some very basics that people need to remember that in any conflict, the only three variables in any conflict are force, timing, and space. And you need to control at least two of those in order to come ahead in that conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you only control one, your opponent has a 66% advantage over you, which is going to be very difficult to overcome. And if you let them gain all three of them, then there is almost an impossibility of getting one of those back. So the perfect example that I bring up, because I've seen it in countless examples of violence you can find online in closed circuit video, is when you see people get sucker punched and you see girls sucker punching other girls because they're letting that girl get in close to their space. So now they have control of space. They have a force greater than the other person in that they're going to hit them, and that hit is going to, knock them out potentially. And they also have a timing advantage because with the sucker punch, one side goes before the other side has a chance to react. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, it's not like touch gloves come out when the bell comes in.
Yep.
It's basically one person gets to yell go before the other person's ready. So
Yep.
if you think about it, when you let a person in, they have space advantage. They have the ability to call go anytime. And if they hit you with force, you can be knocked out, you can be incapacitated, you can be, put into a world of hurt. So there are courses out there that we teach. There are courses out there that a lot of martial arts schools will get into. But the bottom line is if you understand those three variables, force, timing, and space, but then also understand desire, opportunity, and ability, other rules of three, much like the rules of three we talk about in survival, if you remember those two rules of three, you can instantly look at people and say, okay, do they have desire, opportunity, ability, right? 3-question checklist. Do they have desire? Do they have opportunity? Do they have ability? Right. And then you can go into greater depths if you're male, female, whatever. You can look
Yeah.
at them and say hands, waistband, wingspan, right? Hands, waistband, wingspan. So if I look at a person, do they have empty hands? If I look at a person, do they have anything in their waistband? Can I see their waistband? Because that's where weapons are commonly carried. The other thing is, are they walking with a person that has something that they could grab, right? Wingspan away, and now that person can hand it off to that person who wants to do desire or has a desire, opportunity, and ability to hurt me, and now they're truly a threat to me. So there are. I would love to tell you that you have to train formally, but just applying those basics of situational awareness will keep a person safe.
Desire, opportunity, and what?
Ability.
Ability. Got it.
My
Yeah.
friend, my friend Mike Grasso, who used to work for the LAPD, he and referee Big John McCarthy from the UFC, they were the ones
Mhm.
that really kind of formalized that. And they said for cops to go home at night, they had to avoid going home DOA, dead on arrival, and it was desire, opportunity, and ability. So it's
Oh,
just a
wow.
good way of identifying if a person is truly a threat.
Yeah. Wow. That is good. I was writing as fast as you were talking. And I know you cover a lot of that in depth in your courses. Man, I'm not going to let you go because I got some other stuff, but before I do, remind me, I want to tell people how to get the app because a lot of people can't just come to these courses, right? And I know the app is pretty extensive and probably touches on a lot of these things that you cover more in depth in the courses. So it might just whet our appetite, but it also might just give folks enough information to be, you know, sufficient in a certain situation. But all right, let's talk risk mitigation for let's climb into the brains of a teenager, okay, if we can. You're a lot closer, you're a lot less removed from that time frame than I am, but um so being that I have kids that are there, I feel like I live it somewhat, and I'm constantly going through checklists before they leave the house, right? Maybe first, because you're a tactical guy, let's get real tactical and pragmatic here before they leave the house. Let's say it's a group of kids that are going to go out, right? They're going to go to the movies and they're going to go to the mall, which I'm against that. So I may be okay with movies, but mall I'm almost 99% against. But give me some parental kind of verbiage discussion bullets here to go over with them to prepare them when they go out. And I know
So
there's a lot, okay? I know there's a lot, but touch on some.
all right. So again, rules of three. Okay.
Yeah.
We always talk about rules of three in survival, and that's like 3 minutes without air, 3 weeks without food, three
Yeah.
days without water, all those, right? 3 hours exposed to the elements. Well, how about phone, wallet, and keys, right? Phone, wallet, keys. Do you have those three? If you don't have your phone, wallet, keys, where are they? And get in the habit of putting them in the same spot every single day so you can find them. Now, telling a teenager to do that, that's going to be pretty difficult because they're going to treat their phone like, it's
Mm-hmm.
a toy. And, if those teenagers were like me as a kid, I left my toys everywhere, right?
Sure.
Until they develop a protocol or a habit. So phone, wallet, and keys, I would say those are essential. The other thing is, when I was a kid, and when I was a teenager, granted, I'd go out to high school parties. I'd have fun in high school, and
Yep.
I'd be home from college, and I have fun with my friends. But my parents were like, "Listen, if you're going to go out, we want to know when you're coming back. We want to know where you're going." Right? Those were another thing. That was something else. Now,
Yep.
if you want to make that a rule of threes, who are you going with? Where are you going? When are you coming home? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the three questions. So where are
Yep.
you going? Who are you going to be with? When are you coming home? Now, if you're a parent, you're probably going to want to have some type of stipulation. If you cannot make it home by this time, you need to call me by this time, right? The same way that we create a comms window when we go into the wilderness. And if I were to tell my friends, right now, my buddy Jerry and my buddy George, they're my two emergency contacts on my inReach. And I carry my inReach every single day. I always tell them, if you guys don't hear from me when I'm going here in X number of days, then guess what? Send the cavalry because
Mm.
it's a comms window. It means I will be communicating you between this time and this time on this day,
Yeah.
and create that with your kids.
Yeah.
It's like, look, if you're not going to be home by 11 o'clock, call me between 10 and 10:30.
Yeah.
Done. Right. And then that alleviates a lot of the problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's good
because
too that we have the apps that are out there. I mean, we obviously have Life 360 and those kinds of things where you can see where they are real time, which is very handy. But I like the window of look, if I don't hear from you by this time that you're on your way home, I we're going to have a thing, we're going to have a problem, or I'm going to call you, or you're going to get a text or whatever. So what, I selfishly want to get your take on some of this, because I want to know if I'm doing it right. Because when they leave, like I'm big on the whole, the 15, is it 15 yards, 25 yards, or it's a scan the perimeter, right? And then
The
as you're
five and
walking to the
25.
car, right, you
Mhm.
go out and then in, and or vice versa. I don't know, but do you do parents? How many parents would you say even have that conversation of, hey, before you get out of the car, you look in all the mirrors, right? I mean, that just seems basic common sense. But go into some of that kind of tactical stuff as far as what the kids can do.
Now, keep in mind, I grew up in the 80s, and
Same.
whenever it was Wednesday, right, my dad was on call from being a doctor, and we would go shopping, right? We'd go to Kmart, we'd go to Toys R Us, we'd go, we had Caldor and Bradley's over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there were times where I was like, Dad, I don't want to go in. He's like, okay, you can stay in the car. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like maybe a 6 or 7 year old kid at this point, playing with GI Joes or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the back seat. My dad was like, if anyone comes to this car, honk the horn. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how we lived. I mean, that's what we did. Um, that conversation doesn't take place enough with vehicles, but it also doesn't take place with the home. My dad would
Yeah.
always say, when you're home alone, you're going to lock the doors before you go to sleep. Check every window, check every door, double check, triple check everything, because you may think you locked it, but you got
Mm-hmm.
distracted. So get in the habit of understanding security. And security is a concept that it extends from your person to your vehicle to your home to your workplace. And
Mm-hmm.
if you always remember security, right? Am I secure? Okay. If you think about that question, if you can't say you're not secure, then take the action that you need to become secure. Perfect example. If you are a teenager and you're out with your friends, it's after the prom and you're going to the beach, right? Like that's what a,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of kids did after the prom. Okay, so you pull up and you go camping with your friends at the beach because that's what a lot of kids do. Well, maybe you find a spot and you're like, okay, this is a great spot, but that dude over there looks really shady. Okay,
Yeah.
so now you don't feel secure. Well, go make yourself secure. Instead of camping here, even though your friends might say, well, we want to stay, tell them no. And you got to, if they're your friends, they'll understand. You
Mm-hmm.
find a new spot that you're more secure, right? And that type of thing, if you just focus on that one word, security, and if you understand what security means and then the consequences of not having security, then you'll take all the correct action. And that's what my dad taught me as a kid. Secure the car, be secure in the car. When we go hiking, my dad would say, grab a stick. And I was like, okay, hiking stick. He goes, that, or you beat dogs with it if dogs come at you.
Yeah.
Like, always think of security. Like, you should be aware of what could become a weapon, not
Yeah.
necessarily that someone could grab, but what you could grab to make
Mm-hmm.
yourself secure. I would say focus on that. And obviously, with security, part of it is being aware, right? Doing that scan of your fives and 25s, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what's in your immediate area and what
Mm-hmm.
could be in your area in a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And like you said, parents may not be having that conversation enough, because I think because we're so just conditioned, or parents are maybe in their phones, or we're in the age of that'll never happen to us. We watch the news, but that happens to those people. Like we think we're all in this little bubble, and I'm telling you, a lot of that danger that back in the 80s just kind of seemed like it was way far in the distance to most of us in the suburbs anyway. Like that's coming for us now, and it's on our front porch, and it's real. And so I'm over the top. I know my kids think I'm over the top, but I mean, I'm just constantly like, give me a hypothetical. Okay, so let's say you've got teenagers right now, and you're sitting in the living room, and you know that they're going out on an evening. It's not a bunch of drinking. It's a group of kids that are fairly harmless, right? But they're going out with their friends. They're going to go to the movie, and then probably going to go to a restaurant after, which could be 10, 11 o'clock that they're going to go eat. Okay, take me through that dialogue. If you're the dad on the couch before they walk out the door, your son and your daughter, 17 and 15.
So I think before you have that conversation that night, you've got to practice it building up to that. You've got to
That's
say
good.
restaurants, you say, where's the kitchen? And
That's
the kids are
good.
probably like, why? Because there's an exit through the kitchen. There has
That's
to be,
right. Yeah.
and you say, if anything bad happens, you run to the kitchen, you get out of here. Because as a child, as a teenager, you don't have your man muscle or your woman muscle yet, but you
Yep.
have a great advantage. You probably have legs, you probably have wind. And again, if you can put space between you and a threat, then you can bring any amount of force, right? You can bring any amount of timing, and you have that space between you, and it won't matter, you
Yeah.
know? Um, like, again, you got to have these conversations building up, because otherwise it sounds crazy if little Susie's going out and you're like, hey, little Susie, have fun tonight. Anything happens, find the kitchen, run to it, right? You
Fives
sound
and
like,
25, Susie.
yeah, fives and 25 Susie, stab people in the face,
Yeah.
like you'll hear
Yeah.
people sound like they're wild or crazy when they say things like that. But if you build that into the culture where little Susie's already thinking like that, like, you know why I'm showing you this, little Susie? Why is that, Dad? Because Daddy loves you, and Daddy wants you to grow old someday and have, you know,
Yeah.
babies so Daddy can be a granddaddy, right? Like,
Yeah.
you tell them what's at stake, and you say you need to put space between you and the threat. And that's the same reason why I would tell high school kids, if there's a lockdown and you're closer to an exit than you are to a classroom, run for that exit and just keep running.
Yeah.
um, because no one that I know of right now, with the exception of the one school shooting where the school shooters pulled the fire alarm and waited for people to congregate in a courtyard, no one has tried to uh, single out a runner escaping a building. They've tried to find multiple targets in one area.
Yeah.
So they don't want to give up that space. Again, force timing space. They're bringing
Hmm.
the force. They're trying to control the space. They don't want to turn their back on potential victims. They want to go into that area. So if
Yeah.
you're closer to a door or a window you can jump out of safely
Yeah.
and put space between you and the threat, do that, as opposed to getting into a classroom where you're just waiting to die.
Yeah, that's good. No, I appreciate what you said about having the conversation multiple times, like almost like a rehearsal with your kids ahead of time, right? Because I just had the conversation with my son this week. We were talking about, I don't even remember, something in the news. And I said, that's why we have got to predetermine action before a situation, right? We've got to, in our mind, predetermine how this is going to go down if this happens. Like I'm sure you talk about that all the time when you're teaching a concealed carry or whatever. You're like, you got to play out the situation before it actually happens, before you think you may know what you're going to do in that situation. Your mind's already got to be bought in, right, to what happens and what transpires. And my kids, they know, like, I did the whole, and may have heard it on Mike Glover podcast, may have got the idea from him about the whole exit in the kitchen and all that. My kids know, sit near the kitchen. They know, sit facing the door, which I think everybody knows that now. Most of the people that listen to this. So yeah, you got to rehearse that, right? You got to, and that's the other good thing about your courses is that is a dress rehearsal for real life. Hopefully never have to use it, but yeah.
Yeah, and one of the other things is understand when the timing is right. Again, force timing in space. If you run out, if you run away from something that's not a threat and you run through the kitchen, run through the back, you're probably going to get in trouble for doing that. Like,
Sure.
you need to be aware. And if you try running when it's too late, you're not going to be effective. Like, we always say that there's a finite time span for any event, and the time that you have to act is milliseconds.
Mm-hmm.
Where, for adults, we say if you draw your pistol too early at a threat, then you're brandishing or you're doing something that is against the law. If you try to draw your pistol too late, then you're behind the power curve. You're probably already bleeding out or dying, or you're dead. So you have to know when you are supposed to act. And again, if you do it too soon, it's on you. If you do it too late, it's on your relatives. So these kids
Mm.
have to know that they've got to be aware. They've got to constantly cycle through things. And if they get that little sensation that something's not right, then that's not the time to go deeper in the phone. That's the time to take their level of alertness up a notch, right? So if they're at code yellow, there should be at code orange, right? If we follow
Mm-hmm.
Cooper's color code. And never should they be in white, right? They should
Yeah.
never be in white.
I mean, I think, and it's a fine line to try to teach and educate and train your kids, because you don't necessarily want them walking through life thinking everybody walking across the parking lot toward their basic vicinity is going to attack them, right? You don't necessarily want them. I'm okay with it if my kids assume the worst in that situation, but you're not trying to create paranoia either. So there's a fine line. I mean, you got to meet kids where they are mentally. You can't go, full assault on your description of anybody in the parking lot automatically grab your whatever weapon that you're walking with. But you do have to teach them, look, there are those times when you think it's not something, it could be something. So I like the space one. I'm going to use that, the space and the timing and the force, but space kind of trumps those others if you can manage the space, if you're controlling that narrative. What can you recommend that a teenager can carry? I mean, I guess they could carry a fixed blade if they're out just kind of on the weekend on their own, but teenage girls in groups, pepper spray, like, I don't know what's practical.
So I'm not going to go into specifics, but I'll say abide by the laws and understand that there are items that we carry that have great weapon signature and items that we carry that have great tool signature.
Okay.
Keep in mind that the history of the Filipino culture is one where agricultural tools were used during times of oppression as weapons of war.
Mm,
And there are tools that you can carry. There are items that you can carry on a daily basis that don't look like anything, but they
mm,
can be used combatively and they
mm,
can be used in a way that makes up for that size disparity. Because again, it's very, very difficult for someone smaller to hurt someone with striking alone,
yeah.
empty hand striking. Very
Right.
difficult if they're smaller than their aggressor. It's very difficult for Jiu Jitsu to work, smaller player against a larger player when the larger
Yeah.
player doesn't play by sport Jiu Jitsu rules.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the can opener is a perfect example. If you want to pull me in your guard, go ahead. But if we're fighting, I am going to grab your groin and I'm going to can open you, and it's going to crank your neck. It's going to hurt like hell. So I always tell people understand the difference between sport training and combatives. And
Yeah.
then know what you can carry that is a force multiplier, something that when you put it in your hand will increase the capability of your hand, limit the or decrease the chance that your hand is going to get injured in a fight, and will do the maximum amount of damage. Now, it may be illegal for young adults to carry knives, but if you're in a school and you have pens, well,
Sure.
what does a knife do? It slashes and it punctures very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, a pen can do one of those things. So
Yeah.
I'll just say this: whatever you decide to carry, understand there are actions that you need to know how to use with those. But then there are also consequences if you use them incorrectly or if you're carrying something that you're not supposed to be carrying. Like
Mm-hmm.
carry a ball peen hammer into the wrong place, and I don't care who you are, no one's going to believe you that you're using it to put little, finish nails in,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
carpentry. Like, oh, it's my ball peen hammer. Yeah, there's no marks on it.
That's right. That's
So maybe a
right.
little
That's
DIY, but
hilarious.
yeah. So understand that there's always consequences for what you carry too.
No, that's good. The signature is a key part of that. I appreciate that. Well, I mean, there's a lot of places we could go with this, and I appreciate you doing that. I can tell the sun is setting where you're
Look at that.
located. The sun
I,
is it
I
is
started
dark
drinking
now.
my coffee.
No, I appreciate you doing this, man. It's all been great information. Is every time you're on a podcast that I listen to or listen to yours or when you come on here, man, you're just a wealth of information. And I know we're just scratching the surface. And again, nothing replaces actually going out and practicing what we're talking about, because all the knowledge in the world is only going to prepare you to a certain level. So that's my encouragement. Do you have any encouragement for the teenage audience that might be listening? Because I know my kids are going to listen and maybe share it. So what do you have for them as far as a preparedness, awareness, and maybe protection?
So my advice is do not underestimate what you're learning now and the trajectory that it's going to take you on. Even if you get a highlight of something now, you never know where that's going to go you know, building out from the future, right? Like it might be a very small, foothold now, but it becomes something greater years from now. So if there's something that is in your life that you're interested in, continue building that interest, continue building that hobby into a pastime, maybe a side hustle. And who knows, maybe it will become your full-time job someday, much like mine has been. I mean, I've always been into shooting sports and martial arts and survival, and I parlayed that into a career. And now I have the opportunity to share that with others. And I'm bringing it back full circle with my charity fund and with the work I'm doing with different programs. So if there's something that you believe in now. Don't let other people tell you not to believe in that. If anything, find those people in your life who will help foster your understanding of what your passion is and help you grow that passion into something greater, because someday it will be your reality.
That's right. That's good. That's a good encouragement. And to your point a little bit ago, earlier in the conversation, find those people that are like-minded with you, with the Christian worldview that you have. And those are usually good people to bounce stuff off of and to get, prayer about direction, and to just get that, just good counsel sometimes is always good to have. Man, Kevin, Estela, man, I hope you have a good weekend. I really appreciate you coming on. We will put the link and to the app for Fieldcraft Survival, to your book. We can find you at, tell them where to find you on Instagram.
Yeah, so Instagram and Twitter, it's the same account. It's Estela Wild Ed, ESTELA WILDED. That's my old company, Estela Wilderness Education. And you guys can just find me on all the socials, our YouTube channel, our Instagram channel. You'll see me popping up there.
Yeah, cool. Well, audience, with that, he has been the Kevin Estela. We've been last in line. Be blessed.